So after all this time, I have finally gotten around to watching every Pierce Brosnan James Bond movie. I don't know what took me so long. I feel like I should have watched all 4 years ago, but for whatever reason, I had only seen GoldenEye up to this point, but never once watched Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, and Die Another Day until the last week or so. I guess the reason I avoided them is because people always told me they're really bad, but is that the case? Are Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, and Die Another Day as bad as people say? And is GoldenEye as good as people claim it is? Well, let's talk about all 4 of them today. First is GoldenEye. I've seen the movie now, I believe, 3 times over the last 10 years, and have considered GoldenEye good ever since the first time I watched it in full back in 2016. I'm a little biased towards GoldenEye because I played the hell out of the video game on the Nintendo 64 with my friends and brothers when I was a kid. So many fond memories, and so whenever I watch GoldenEye, I always think of those days. But since it has been quite some time since I last watched GoldenEye, I wanted to rewatch it again for this video to see how I feel about it now. Now, I don't know why, but I'm always back and forth with my thoughts on GoldenEye. The first time I saw GoldenEye, I'll admit, I wasn't the biggest fan. Then the second time around, I gained a lot of respect for it and considered it great. And now, the third time I saw it, which was recently, you know what? I thought this movie was kind of slow and only had a few moments that stood out. Still a really good movie, but not as good as I remember it the last time. The fact is, like many action movies before the 2000s, GoldenEye can in fact be pretty slow here and there. I watched it with my mom and her boyfriend. They said they didn't really enjoy the movie all that much. I was giving them some crap for that because it's still a very good movie, like I said, but that just shows that GoldenEye is not for everybody. And what I mean by slow is, it's not the most exciting movie whenever no action is on screen. Or when Bond isn't having a conversation with the likes of M, Q, or Alec Trevelyan, aka 006, played exceptionally by Sean Bean. So when the movie isn't focused on any of those moments, it can be a little boring. When Bond is in a casino, or when one of the villains is squeezing a man to death in bed, I'm like, can we just move on to the next action scene or a great conversation or something more exciting than this? However, the opening sequence between the record-breaking bungee jump and the motorcycle cliff dive, plus the tank sequence, all make the slow pacing worth it. I also find the ending satisfying. It's better than some of Craig's finales. So GoldenEye, overall, really good movie. It has some of the best Bond moments we've ever gotten. I just would not put it up there with the likes of Casino Royale or Skyfall from the Craig era. Then following GoldenEye, as I said, it seems like the general consensus among people is the other 3 Brosnan movies aren't very good. Do I agree with this sentiment? With that being said, let's talk about Tomorrow Never Dies. Well, you know what? The first half of Tomorrow Never Dies began to make me think people were right about this movie, because the first half of Tomorrow Never Dies is not very good. After the great opening runway and jet sequence, not a whole lot happens. But thankfully, the second half of Tomorrow Never Dies is a significant improvement over the first half, picking up the pace big time. What we get from the second half on is one of the best action movies I have seen in a long time, and one that also clearly inspired many other films that came after it, including Mission Impossible Fallout and 2025's Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning. Remember the Halo jump in Fallout and the submarine scene in The Final Reckoning? This is the movie that inspired those stunts, and even though I do prefer the stunts from Mission Impossible, this movie walked so the Mission Impossible franchise could run. Also, Tomorrow Never Dies finale is an ending that stands out to me. I would absolutely consider it great. It's the best of the Pierce Brosnan films. Now, Jonathan Pryce may actually be my favorite Bond villain that I've been introduced to recently. And I'm not just saying this because I like the actor Jonathan Pryce. No, his character is more relevant today than ever before. With ratings wars and the media interfering with real-world events, him being this power-hungry media mogul is very much in line with what's happening today. Also, he's hilarious. I'm sorry, but this scene cracked me up. Vintage Bond villain right there. Come on. So Tomorrow Never Dies is probably the most underrated James Bond movie that I have seen yet. If you have never seen Tomorrow Never Dies and are thinking about writing it off because that first hour isn't too exciting, give it a chance, get to that second hour, and I promise you, it is well worth it. I can't say I feel the same about The World Is Not Enough though. In fact, The World Is Not Enough pulls a 180 on you. That's because the first hour is actually good. The action sequences are up to par with what we saw from GoldenEye and Tomorrow Never Dies. Then the second half ruins everything the first hour had built. The reason I say this, you ask? It's because they found a way to bore me to death. I don't know what happened. How do you go from a phenomenal boat chase and ski scene to what I found to be a very convoluted, plot-heavy second half? All in all, The World Is Not Enough became too confusing for my own liking. Between the money exchange sequences and protecting Electra King, there's also a pipeline subplot, you have the Stockholm Syndrome aspect, then there's a 009 backstory with the villain Renard mixed in, plus Bond has another girl he's into, Christmas, who's doing her own thing. So there's a lot going on with the plot, and I found it difficult to keep up with, particularly during the second half. I would excuse that if the action sequences were great during that time span, but no, that's not the case at all. Yeah, they thought it'd be really cool to have helicopters with blades at the bottom of them. The finale on the submarine is a joke. It's not good at all. I don't buy for a second that Bond and Renard are actually fighting. The convoluted plot is a shame. It did not need to be that way because they had a cool villain on their hands in Renard. But unfortunately, they don't do anything with him. Instead, they tried a little too hard. You have Electra betraying Bond, when in reality, I was more interested to learn more about Renard, but we never really do. I wish this was a movie about Bond and Renard only. We did not need Electra or Christmas. Take them both out of the movie and it's instantaneously better. Also, I had no idea that Renard was played by Robert Carlyle. That man deserved so much better than this. Finally, last and most certainly least, Die Another Day. Now, for some reason, I went into Die Another Day hopeful. And I guess it's because the opening sequence hyped me up. It got me excited for the rest to come. Damn, I wish I stopped watching after that because the rest is as bad as people have said. Not only is there minimum action following the opening sequence, but the plot of Die Another Day is just straight up bonkers. And even when there is action on screen following the opening, it's ruined by horrific CGI. We'll get into that CGI in a little bit, but first, let's talk about the main villain, Gustav Graves. Honestly, I have no issue with the character himself. What I have a problem with is everything else about this character, including his backstory. Let me read this off to you real quick. It's ridiculous. So, over the span of 14 months, Graves infiltrates the British elite with a cover story to the effect that he's an Argentinian orphan who struck diamonds, becomes a member of the most exclusive private clubs, and earns himself knighthood. Think about it. He appears out of thin air and accomplishes all of that within 14 months. I'm sorry, but that backstory alone takes more than just a suspension of disbelief to buy into the character. The DNA technology the Colonel uses to transform into Graves, I think, is nonsensical as well. Why couldn't you let Graves be his own person rather than the Colonel using his face as a disguise? You have Toby Stephens, let the man cook. Also, his villainous plot using the solar-powered Icarus to unite Korea under North Korean rule takes nonsensical to the next level. Alright, so pretty much when you get to the Ice Palace in this movie, that's your sign to turn it off. There is no reason for you to watch the movie after the Ice Palace. The writers must have taken inspiration from Batman and Robin because that's what this feels like. Rosamund Pike is in this, and I had no idea that was the case until I started watching Die Another Day, but they ruin her character too because, well, you know how I said they do a double cross with Electra in The World Is Not Enough? Well, they decided to do it again in Die Another Day with her for some reason. Anyway, let's discuss the CGI. Oh god. It's terrible. I don't understand how you go from the opening sequence, which looks really good, to this utter joke of a moment where Bond is surfing in Iceland. I guess their budget had run out at that point, because following the surfing sequence, it does not get any better. And that's crazy because the budget, I'm pretty sure, was $140 million. And I saw people say who watched the movie back in 2002 that the CGI looked bad back then. So my question is, what were you guys thinking? Sure, you have a fine car chase scene on ice, but then the finale, which takes place on a plane, looks almost as bad as the surfing scene. Honest to God, I have no idea what happened here. How could this be the most recent of the 4 Pierce Brosnan Bond movies, and yet it looks the worst by a mile? Well, at least Pierce Brosnan was good, I guess. Why did this have to be his final movie as Bond? Lo and behold, I tricked myself into believing Die Another Day could be underrated, when in fact, yes, it is the worst Pierce Brosnan Bond movie, and is probably the worst Bond movie I have seen out of, well, let me think. I've seen Dr. No, the 4 Brosnan movies, and all 5 Craig movies. So I've seen 10 Bond movies, and I would say this is probably worse than Quantum of Solace. So yes, this is the worst Bond movie I have seen thus far. So some closing thoughts here. In summary, the Brosnan movies started strong with the likes of GoldenEye and Tomorrow Never Dies, but could not continue their hot streak as The World Is Not Enough did not get the job done for me. And Die Another Day sent Pierce off on a low note. I wish we got one more Pierce Brosnan Bond movie to send him off the right way. Hey, there's still a possibility for that though, with Amazon being in charge now. Maybe they'll do a Pierce Brosnan old man version of Bond to send him off. You never know. It's definitely possible. Nah, knowing Amazon, they're gonna pick Tom Holland or Jacob Elordi. So what do you guys think about the Pierce Brosnan James Bond movies? Are they as bad as people have said? And what is your favorite and least favorite of his 4 films? Let me know in the comments. Well, thank you all so much for watching this video. If you're new here and enjoyed yourself, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and turn on all notifications for upcoming videos. I'll catch you all in the next one. See you then.